Start with a clear stage, guys, and let's get started.
Ladies and gentlemen, we, the board appointed to inquire into and report upon the present condition and management of the Coranderrk Aboriginal Reserve, are about to commence our proceedings.
The play is based entirely on the minutes of evidence of the 1881 Coranderrk inquiry, which was a parliamentary inquiry that took place in Victoria.
To investigate accusations brought by the natives of the Coranderrk Aboriginal Reserve against their superintendent, Mr. Strickland.
I work together with Andrew James, who's a Yorta playwright. I come from a historian background, Andrew comes from a playwright background, and of course an Aboriginal background. So by bringing those two things together, we really aim to create a script which would both be good history and also at the same time good theatre.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated and let us commence.
John Green was a lay preacher from Scotland, and he came along with his wife Mary. They established Coranderrk in 1863 together with Barak and Simon Wonga and other Kulin refugees from other clans that had been dispossessed of their own land. They all came together and settled at Coranderrk just outside Healesville. And what was happening on Coranderrk was an anomaly because John Green and William Barak and the community of Coranderrk had forged a unique relationship based on mutual respect.
I find if you put the Aboriginal into the equation, they will strive to keep their own law, and that is where I feel you have failed.
He's got such a modern voice in a way, you know, and I was really surprised to hear a voice back then in that, you know, 1880 whatever we were, you know. I mean, it's so modern. He could be there now, and so brave.
Do you find them truthful on the whole?
Yes, very, and honest. I never missed a fig of tobacco from the store.
Which of the two, the real blacks or the half-castes, did you find the best workers?
Never found any difference.
These Aboriginal people, along with John Green, were able to be totally self-sufficient out there. Have no reliance on anybody else other than the work that they did out at Coranderrk.
That first year, I cut with the Aboriginals 26,000 hot poles. The second year, 16,000, also with the Aboriginals. In 1874, we picked nearly 8 tonne.
With only the blacks working?
Yeah, only the blacks working, and those hops, they earned over £1,000.
In 1874, the Board for the Protection of Aborigines decided that Coranderrk was a threat to the landed interests of white settlers, and by this stage, white settlement was spreading very fast across Victoria, and Coranderrk, which was once established quite far from white settlement, was now virtually surrounded by white farms who had their eye on this fertile plot of land, and they wanted it. So they tried to convince John Green to remove the population. They knew that only he could do it because of the special connection that he had to the people.
See, I thought it would be most cruel to move them because many of them, they'd come there as children, yet been taught that this would be their home if they would stay and work. So I was dismissed because I wouldn't be a party to moving the Aboriginals from Coranderrk.
When he moved out and Strickland came in, he didn't have the people skills to deal with the Aboriginal people at Coranderrk.
Are they good workers as a rule?
They are not.
The treatment wasn't good, so the Aboriginal people decided to, write letters and petitioning to get John Green back so that they could, continue to be self-sufficient.
We would like it if the government leave us here. Give us this ground and let us work Coranderrk and get all the money.
For Aboriginal people to be heard back then was amazing. If all these people on this board at this hearing were redneck racists, it would have been thrown out. And to hear some of the things that the white fellas say, which are the words of the day, is I dropped my jaw.
It was empowering and inspiring to hear the words of William Burdock and the Aboriginal people of Coranderrk, and just how you know, politically savvy they were at that time.
Why not let the people do it themselves? Why don't those white fellas who want to break this station go to try and break some of the squatter stations?
Back at that time, in those circumstances, for Aboriginal people to question their so-called overseers and reformers came with heavy penalties. Families could be split apart, rations could be cut, children could be removed from parents, parents could be sent off to another reserve all the way to Lake Tyers. So the penalties, the risks, the stakes were very high.
The squatters have got more ground in Victoria than we have. We have only got a little piece. White fellas ought to leave us alone. They wouldn't like us to come down to take their land from them and move them out of their homes. We are in Christian land, and we ought to love one another with brotherly love.
For the Aboriginal people of Coranderrk to win the right to stay there at Coranderrk in the 1800s was nearly unheard of. So it was a very proud moment in Aboriginal history.
It still serves today as an example for how things could be managed. If one looks at the Northern Territory intervention today and takes Coranderrk as an example, we can see that in fact 130 years later, relationship between non-Aboriginal and Aboriginal people still hasn't progressed that much from Coranderrk in terms of the lack of consultation, in terms of lack of respect. That example is there, and we can draw upon it any time. And if we implement some of the examples of Coranderrk, the potential to change things in the country is still very much present.
I was inspired and empowered by watching this show, just seeing Aboriginal people and white people work together in 1881. You know, that's a story that has got to be celebrated.